He had been hired to measure land. No one told him the land had already measured him. Spring of 1889, a surveyor named Edmund Cray rode into a valley so narrow it felt less like a geographic feature and more like a decision, as if the mountains on either side had leaned toward each other deliberately, leaving only enough space between them for the dark creek running through the center, and the single road following it south. The town at the bottom of that road was called Vale Crossing, not named for anything hopeful, named for the old word meaning to descend, to go down into something from which return was not guaranteed. Edmund was 34 years old. Lean, precise, with a surveyor's particular relationship to the physical world. He believed in what could be measured. Documented, confirmed. He had taken the contract because 2 other surveyors had declined to finish it, the county clerk who hired him mentioned this once briefly and did not elaborate. Edmund had not pressed, he needed the work. He found out the rest on his second day from the woman who ran the only general store in Vale Crossing, a woman named Dorcas Holt, 60 years old, with the flat, efficient manner of someone who had long ago decided that alarm was a waste of effort. She told him, while counting change she had already counted, that the first surveyor had completed 3 days of work and then sent his instruments back by messenger with a note that said only, "I cannot finish this, I am sorry, do not send another man." The second surveyor had not sent anything back. His horse had been found tied to a fence post on the lower road, with his saddlebag still buckled. That had been 14 months ago. Edmund asked what the county had done about it. Dorcas looked at him for a moment, nodded his face, exactly slightly past it, in the way of someone watching for something. "Behind you then." She went back to counting the change. "Sent you," she said. He found lodging with a retired schoolteacher named Augustine Farr, who rented a room on the upper floor of his house. 2 men passing through on county business. Augustine was 70 quiet in the particular way of someone who had chosen silence as a permanent policy. He fed Edmund supper, charged fair rates, and watched him speak without ever quite meeting his eyes. That night, Edmund wrote in his field journal, "Arrived Vale Crossing, begin survey Monday." The people here have the quality of individuals who know something they have collectively decided not to say. He did not know yet how accurate that was. The property he had been sent to survey was called Wren's Hollow. 300 acres of mixed terrain, cleared pasture in the valley bottom, dense woodland, climbing the eastern slope, and at the top, just below the ridgeline, a house. Edmund first saw it on his 3rd day of work, through a gap in the tree line, where the upper pasture gave way to scrub. He stopped walking. He was not sure why. The house was 2 stories, built from dark stone, symmetrical, with a precision that felt almost aggressive. Every window aligned, every proportion exactly correct, in a way that normal construction never quite managed. It looked less like someone had built it, and more like someone had solved it. He noted it in his log, and moved on. He told himself he had no reason to approach it yet. That night at supper, he asked Augustine about the house. The old man set his fork down slowly, precisely on the rim of his plate. He looked somewhere slightly to the left of Edmund's face. "That's the Cray property," he said. Edmund went still. Cray was his name. Not a common name, not in this part of the country, not anywhere he had worked. He said this. Augustine nodded once, and picked his fork back up, and said nothing further for the remainder of the meal. The following morning, Edmund found the blacksmith, a direct man named Obadiah Vance, who seemed constitutionally incapable of speaking anything other than plain fact, and asked him about the family on the ridge. Obadiah told him that property had been purchased in 1851 by a man named Harlan Cray, who had come from somewhere east, no one knew exactly where, and had built that stone house alone in one winter, which was not possible for one man. By spring it was standing. By the following year, Harlan had a wife named Setha, who had appeared without courtship or explanation, quiet in the way that went past shyness into something else entirely, as if she were always translating the world around her before responding to it. Harlan died in 1871. Setha died within the week. People called it devotion. The property passed to their children, 2 sons, Cabell and Drum, and a daughter named Isolde. The sons worked the land, the daughter answered the door. "Has anyone gone up there recently?" Edmund asked to the house. Obadiah looked at him steadily. "The second surveyor went up," he said. "On a Friday he picked up his hammer. That's all anyone knows about the second surveyor. He went up on a Wednesday in early June. He had a legitimate reason to boundary markers on the eastern edge of the property required confirmation from a family member before he could finalize the survey he had written twice, sending notes through the general store. No reply had come. He went anyway, because the work required it. He told himself this. The path to the house was maintained with unsettling care. He had expected overgrowth, neglect, the approach of a place with something to hide. Instead, the path was clear. The stone walls bordering the upper pasture were in good repair. The grass on either side was cut low. Someone tended this land every day. Someone who did not come to town. The house was more striking up close than it had been from a distance. The stone was dark gray-green, nearly the same color as the lichen on the ridge above, as though it had been built to disappear into the hillside, rather than stand apart from it. The windows were deep-set, the glass old, not cracked, not clouded, but slightly irregular, in the way of glass made before manufacture became precise, so that reflections in it were subtly wrong. He stood before the nearest window, and saw himself reflected present, but tilted a version of himself that had not quite aligned with the one standing behind it. He knocked, he waited, he knocked again. The door opened. The woman who opened it was perhaps 30, dark-haired, slim with gray eyes, and a face that the only word he could find for later was composed, not blank. Composed the way a room looks when it has been arranged before guests arrive. She looked at him without surprise. "Mr. Cray," she said. He told her his name was Edmund Cray, and that he was here on behalf of the county too. "I know why you are here," she said. She stepped back from the door, not quite an invitation, more a withdrawal that left the entrance clear. He went inside. The house was cool in a way that had nothing to do with the season, not the cold of a room without a fire, the cool of a room where the air had stopped, exchanging with the air outside in the way air normally does, as if the house breathed on its own schedule. The sitting room contained old furniture, a stone fireplace with no fire, and a tall clock against the far wall that was running, but running slow, with a fractional pause between tick and talk that made it sound less like mechanism and more like breathing. He asked about the boundary markers. She answered precisely from memory, citing the original deed. She knew this property the way you know something you have walked across every single day of your life. When he stood to leave, her expression changed, not to warmth, but to attention. Real attention, the kind that felt like being held in place by something that had nothing to do with the person in front of you. "You share our name," she said. He agreed it was a coincidence. She looked at him steadily. "You should finish your survey quickly," she said. He waited for more. Nothing came. Halfway down the path, he stopped and looked back. She was standing at the window, the one with the warped glass, watching him leave. In the irregular surface, her reflection was wrong, in the same way his had been present, but not quite aligned with the person standing behind it. He walked the rest of the way down without stopping. He checked the lock on his door that night. He was not sure why there had been no sound on the other side of it. No footstep on the stair, no pressure against the wood. Only the sense arriving slowly from somewhere below the threshold of reason. That there was a reason to check. He checked it on 5 more nights. Over the following 2 weeks he noted this. In his personal journal, a small gray book he had been keeping for years. Without explaining it, he was not a man who wrote feelings. He wrote observations, but Vale Crossing filled more pages of that journal than any previous stretch of time. He completed the survey on a Friday. He had everything the county needed. He packed his equipment, settled his account with Augustin, and told Dorcas Holt at the general store that he would be leaving Saturday morning. She made a sound flat, non-committal. Neither agreement nor concern that sat in the air between them like something unfinished. Saturday morning he loaded his horse and rode south. He was 2 miles out of Vale Crossing when he stopped. He sat on his horse in the morning light and thought about the entry he had written the night before the surveys finished, but something else has not. Concluded and understood, sitting there on the road, that he had written it as a feeling, but it was in fact a fact. He turned the horse around. He told himself every reasonable argument for continuing south for approximately 2 minutes. He had completed his work. He had no further obligation to the valley or to the family on the ridge. He had no evidence of anything wrong. Only a collection of strange feelings in a place with an unsettling history. And a name shared with a family he had never heard of before this contract. None of it moved him. He rode back. Not to town, up the path, past the lower pasture, through the scrub, and into the shadow of the ridge. Isolde Cray was standing on the porch, watching him come up the path. This time her expression was slightly different, something that resembled relief, the way a painting of an open window resembles air. "I knew you would come back," she said. He said. He was not sure why he had. "You are a Cray," she said. "This is where Crays come," he said. He had no family in this valley, that the name was coincidence. She looked at him with the composed patience she always had. "Come inside," she said. "There are things you are going to find out. Regardless, it is better to find them out from us." He went inside. What happened in that house over the next 3 days was something Edmund Cray spent the rest of his life trying to write down. Accurately, and never once managed. He stayed 3 days. He wrote about them for 37 years. On the first day, Isolde showed him documents, letters in a hand he did not recognize, in a language he could not read with fragmentary translations in a different hand alongside. He read what he could. What he understood was that he was reading the record of a continuous practice, not a belief, not a philosophy, but something passed down through proximity, an example across generations. The record did not say what the practice was. It described its maintenance the way a ledger describes transactions, matter-of-factly, without justification. On the second day, Cabell showed him the cellar beneath the house. It was larger than the dimensions of the building above it should have permitted it. Contained objects that Edmund described in his notes only as things of uncertain age and purpose. Not because he lacked precision, but because the more precisely he tried to describe them, the less accurate the description became. He wrote, "There are things beneath that house that were there before the house. The house was built around them, not over them." On the third day, all 3 of them, Isolde, Cabal, and Drum, who had the stillness of something that has never learned to make itself smaller, sat with him in the sitting room with the slow clock, and Isolde told him the actual story. Harlan Cray had not come from somewhere east. He had come from a place that did not translate into a direction. He had come when the family name needed a new physical anchor, a body, a house, a piece of ground in order for something to continue persisting in the world. The name was not an identity, it was a marker. It marked a place where something that did not ordinarily occupy the same space as ordinary life had worn through. Not fully, not dangerously, but persistently, the way old stone lets water through at a joint, not an opening, a constant pressure at a weak point. Edmund asked what he was supposed to do with this information. Isolde said, "Nothing you haven't already been doing." He asked what he had already been doing. She said, "Carrying it the way you carry a weight you've had so long, you no longer notice it. You don't need to do anything different, you only need to know it's there." He asked what happened if he didn't want to know. She looked at him for a long time. "It doesn't change whether it's there or not," she said. He left on the 4th morning, not hurriedly, not frightened. He rode south without stopping, and wrote nothing for 6 days. On the 5th night, camped by a creek south of the valley, he woke at 3 in the morning, not to a sound, not to anything nameable, to the same weighted quality of air he had felt in his locked room at Augustin's house. He lay still. He listened. The creek ran. An owl called. He got up and checked the perimeter of his camp, methodically, the way you check something you have checked so many times it has become muscle memory. There was nothing there that he could see, or hear, or touch. He went back to his bedroll, and wrote 4 words in the gray journal. "It came with me." He submitted the survey report to the county in July of 1889. It was complete, accurate, professional, and contained no reference to anything beyond the scope of the work he went on, to other surveys, other properties, other remote stretches of land. He was known as thorough, reliable, unusually precise. He never returned to Vale Crossing. He never looked up the Cray name in any public record, though records were his profession, and he could have found them easily. He checked his lock for the rest of his life. He died in 1926, 37 years after he first rode into Vale Crossing on a contract he had not been fully informed about. His housekeeper, a woman named Flory, who had worked for him for 15 years, and who said by her own account that she had always known there was something in the house, with them not threatening, just present, like a door left slightly open at the end of a hallway, said she woke at 3 in the morning on the night he died, and knew before she crossed the hall that he was gone. She said the weighted feeling, the one she had always known was there, was simply absent. Gone the way a sound goes, when the thing making it finally stops, like something had been waiting in that house for 37 years, and when it finally had what it had come for, it left. Vale Crossing still appears on maps, if you know which editions to look at. By 1961, it had been reclassified as an unincorporated community. By 1968, it had been removed entirely, not because the land changed. Land does not stop existing, because someone decided it did not need to be in the record. The Cray property is still there. County parcel records show continuous ownership under the same family name. If you were to call the assessor's office and ask who owns that parcel, they would read you a name. You already know what it is.